I feel that because there are so many different areas that are boiling, the pot's going to boil over somewhere and it's going to affect everything else and the whole thing is going to go. So I would just say, whatever you need to get done, do it as fast as you can.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and this is the Miles Franklin Weekly Special for August 28th through September 4th, 2023, while supplies last. This week we feature your choice 1-ounce silver rounds at just $2.50 over spot. Choose between the Silver Buffalo or Silver Asahi rounds, both at $2.50 over spot, both 22 a tube, and both 500 to a box. The Silver Buffalo is made by various private mints across the U.S., with a design based on James Earl Fraser's iconic Buffalo nickel. These 3/9 fine rounds are highly recognizable and one of the most trusted types of bullion rounds available. Next, the Asahi refinery continues the legacy of famed private mint Johnson Matthey, which they purchased in 2015 and refined with the same attention to detail, cementing their status as an LBMA certified supplier. Their 1-ounce rounds are also 3/9 fine and also on sale for just $2.50 over spot. Additionally, the Asahi rounds are IRA eligible. If you'd like to learn more about a precious metals IRA, call us, and we'll be happy to help you in that process. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We are privileged to have this widely followed guest, Bill Holter, a former Wall Street manager and a longtime bullion expert and writer and speaker on the topics all about finances, is here with us again this Tuesday, the 29th of August, 2023. Bill, thanks for coming back on Liberty and Finance.
Thanks for having me back, Don, again.
Just to explain to people my black eye and cuts and stuff, I did a glorious face plant on the pickleball court Sunday morning. I always run back to try to get lob shots, and lobs are a viciously difficult thing to get in pickleball. But I was trying a little too hard, tripped up on my feet, and ended up landing on my face and wrists and knee, and so I got road rash all over me. But the good news is, went quick trip to the urgent care. My wife drove me, and the doctor said, "Yeah, you're okay. Don't even need stitches. Don't need nothing. Just go back." So we went right back to the courts and finished out the match. So that was pretty cool. And you were giving me a couple of wisecracks there about full contact sports that shouldn't be full contact.
Yeah, in high school we used to play full contact golf, and none of the matches ever lasted more than 9 holes. They were usually only 2 or 3 holes, and that would be it.
And that brings a lot of images to mind, but I hope clubs weren't involved.
No. You couldn't go after someone with a club, but you could tackle them from behind while they were in the middle of the swing.
That sounds like something that older, wiser heads would prevail, and I'm glad you don't do that anymore. So, well, anyway, Bill, we wanted to have you back on because you speak with such frankness and down-to-earth simplicity and straightforwardness, despite having decades of experience in these areas that are likely to cause great disruptions in people's lives going forward. You recently wrote an article and you posted it on your website. We're going to give you more chance to tell people about where they can find that at the end, but if we're going to draw from topics that you exposed in that article on how you see it all unfolding. You talk about geopolitics, internal politics, the rule of law, social issues, financial issues, and in addition to that, about how everything today is a lie, which reminds me of our talk that we had with James Rawls, the founder of the survivalblog.com. He calls it, "We are living in the age of deception and betrayal. Prepare accordingly, invest accordingly, relocate accordingly." As usual, you say things in fewer words than anyone else. You say everything today is a lie. So could you talk to us about some of those key points you think we must not miss of what we're not being told in the areas, I guess starting with geopolitics, but leading to those other 5 top areas of how you see things unfolding?
Yeah, just broadly, if you're getting information from mainstream media or official government narratives, 99% probability that it's bullshit. And it's gotten so bad now because of AI that you can actually can actually watch videos or see pictures or what have you with your own eyes that are made up. So you really need to be careful. If something doesn't smell right or seem right to you, you can be pretty sure that it's not right. As far as the article is concerned,
yeah, I want to just, if I may, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want to introduce an underscore right there about your potential for false videos and that sort of thing. Even back in 1984, ironic choice of words, I attended, just fresh out of college with a computer degree and so on. My first career job was at a place that did image processing, high performance supercomputers for imaging and stuff like that. And I attended in Minneapolis at the time a conference called SIGGRAPH, Special Interest Group on Graphics. I came home from that after seeing what they were capable of even at that time in 1984, and I told my wife, never believe anything you see on video again. So go ahead.
Yeah, I wrote the article because I see pretty much everything. And when I say everything, I mean, I tried to include all the angles in the article. Everything is at a boiling point right now. I was a broker for 23 years. I was a branch manager for 12 years. Up until 2006, I went through the 87 crash, the sovereign debt crisis in the early 90s, the long-term capital in 1997, the dot-com bubble, and ended up leaving the country prior to the great financial crisis because I knew something very bad was going to happen. And then obviously I've seen what's happened since then. It just feels to me that all of those crises wrapped up together were at the doorstep of the culmination of all of it. Like I said, everything is boiling at this point. I mean, if you look at geopolitics, there's no question about it. The U.S. is waning and the East is waxing. The U.S. is losing power no matter where you look, whether it be financially, militarily, reputation-wise. I mean, foreigners are looking at the U.S. from a rule of law standpoint, and they have to be laughing. So from a geopolitical standpoint, the U.S. is, at this point, probably have lost the leadership of the world, but at least is losing leadership to the world. And I think the only comparison you can make, and in the article I talked about, or I just mentioned that from the 1600s on in the West, you had the Dutch leading the world, then you had the Spanish, then the French, then the British, and then the U.S. after Bretton Woods. I think the only real comparison that you can make of a power, losing that power would be the Roman Empire. The United States, I mean, obviously, from a time standpoint, the Roman Empire lasted far, far longer. But what the U.S. has done, what they did as far as building power and what they've done to lose power, completely dwarfs how bad it was Rome's fall. I mean, this is a changing of the guard, and at this point, there's nothing that's going to stop that. Internally, politically, think about all of the divisiveness that's going on in this nation. You've got right versus left. You have racial disparity. You have gender disparity. You have vaxxers versus anti-vaxxers. You've got maskers versus anti-maskers. There are just so many divisions, and I equated it to a pie that now has 100 different slices. It's been sliced and diced 50 times, leaving 100 pieces. And the problem is those pieces that get cut in half, it's past the point of dislike, and it's entered the realm of hate. I mean, you've got just all you have to do is just look at social media and see the violence and anger between two different groups. So politically, this country is so divided, and it's being divided more and more every day. Then you've got the rule of law, which is an absolute joke. I mean, you have to say, first off, you have to say that a banana republic requires two things. They have to be financially broke, and the rule of law has to have broken down. We have both of those. We are a banana republic. There's no question about it, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But just from the standpoint of the rule of law, what are they doing now with, just an example, with Trump? He's got 4 separate indictments with 100 different charges. And when are those court cases supposed to be done? They're supposed to be done in the middle of the election season. And I might add, isn't it funny that all of a sudden COVID's coming back and you're going to need another vaccine and you better start wearing masks? And I'm going to say the because is they have to have mail-in ballots. There's no way that they can cheat enough to beat Trump without mail-in ballots, and obviously trying to tie his arms or tie his hands together during the campaign season would be simply, make him show up in court time after time after time. The rule of law, I mean, think about the things that have come out just in the last month or 2 months, and we knew plenty before. But what's come out over the last month or two regarding Biden? I mean, there's absolute hard proof that the man is bribed, and he's been bribed by foreign nations. I mean, that's obviously an impeachable offense. And it now looks like the media is starting to turn probably the plan. They're probably, in my estimation, they will probably either impeach Biden or he may step down. And my guess is you'll probably see Gavin Newsom step up for the election. Financially, I mean, we've talked for years now from a financial standpoint. There's every ratio you look at is flashing red. I mean, look at the debt ratios. You can look at well, you can't look at unemployment because that's a complete lie. You can't look at the official inflation numbers because that's a complete lie. I mean, they're telling you that inflation's 4%, and I mean, there are some things that are going up 4% in the last 30 days. So I mean, from a financial standpoint, so that's what, 4 of the 5. What was the one I'm missing?
Societal issues.
Oh yeah, well that one we could have fun with that. We probably shouldn't. But I mean, think about this. What does it look like to the rest of the world when we have a general or generals that come up to the podium wearing a skirt or a dress? I mean, is that meant to scare the shit out of Russia and China? There's so many things societally. You've got, the gender issues. You've got, look what they're doing in schools. We could do a whole show on how whacked out society has become, but suffice it to say that if the things that are supposed to pass for normal today, just 5 or 10 years ago would have been nuts. And 30, 40 years ago, you would have had outrage like you've never seen before. So from a societal standpoint, we've gone completely in the toilet. And my hope is when this thing does completely collapse, that you have people turn toward God and not away.
And turn towards the restoration of the unity of the healthy family and of local communities and of states, sovereignty of states, etc., in the face of this, both federal overreach gone mad, but also global overreach gone mad. I guess that's one thing you mentioned briefly in geopolitics was the waxing and waning of empires. Can you talk to us about the global aspects of that now that may be different in a couple different, you mentioned a couple different dimensions in your article. One was about never before in the history of the world has all of this gone wrong at the same time to the scale that it is. You also, in the financial thing, didn't talk about the derivative complex. Yeah, the lights are all red on the dashboard, but you didn't mention that the engine is about to blow up. So can you maybe touch on globalism and how things are happening all over the world at the same time, and then the derivative complex?
Yeah, let's start with the derivative complex. You're probably looking at over a $2 quadrillion market. I mean, that's valued way, way, way more, like 4 or 5 times more than what all the assets on the planet are valued at. There's no way they can perform. But what they did do was they allowed, from an accounting standpoint, to say, hey, we have no risk. We have this derivative that if XYZ happens, we're covered. The problem is all these derivatives, they cannot and will not perform. And I mean, the question you need to ask is, what is the value of a derivative or anything, a contract? What's the value of a contract that cannot perform? And the answer is zero. Give me the other two that you were looking at.
You talked about geopolitics from waxing and waning of empires, but I didn't hear you stress the globalism.
Right. If you go back to 1929, that was an absolute disaster. You had the 1930s, you had the Great Depression. It was not a fully global problem from the standpoint. I mean, today, everything is global. Trade is global. I mean, pretty much all countries do business with the majority of the other countries as far as trade. Same thing goes for finance. But back in the 1930s, because we didn't have computers, we didn't have instant information, and there were areas that were completely unaffected by the Great Depression. Today, that's not the case. And one other big important difference was back then you had currencies that were real money. They were backed by gold. In other words, dollars were derivatives of gold. Dollars were exchangeable into gold. Today, that's not the case. The case today is probably 60 to 70% of the central banks worldwide use dollars as their main reserve currency. So you're using a currency that's issued by a bankrupt, by an insolvent entity. What happens when the U.S. goes down? Are these other countries going to be unaffected? No, their central banks will collapse and their currencies are going to collapse. So this is truly, it's truly a global event, whereas the last, real bad depression was not totally global. Yes, it affected Europe. Yes, it affected the United States. Asia was relatively unaffected. You had Russia relatively unaffected. South America, Africa. I mean, where were they back in the 1930s? I mean, they were still probably still sending smoke signals for communication. So today's different because it's all engulfing and information is pretty much immediate. And the other thing is from a supply chain standpoint, you didn't have back then. You did not have just-in-time supply chains. I mean, you had logistics, more difficult logistics. But today, you could have one thing break in a supply chain, and all of a sudden, the car doesn't get built. We saw that with chips. There's so many industries now that are just-in-time inventory that if something gets tripped up, the final product is not going to be made.
The other aspect of globalism, if you could address it, is about not just the interconnectedness of the supply chains and not just the interconnectedness of the financial dependency on a single global currency, but the idea of organizational power being centralized globally, to where nations no longer get to call their own shots for the best of their own people. They're supposedly following guidelines that are being issued by organizations that most people couldn't name, more than maybe a single name that's on that we didn't vote for them. We weren't elected. Speaking of concern about the validity of elections, what about these organizations that may be calling the shots for the whole world that weren't elected at all?
Right, and these organizations are obviously meddling in elections. I mean, look at the money that George Soros has spent to put representatives, senators, district attorneys in particular. So there definitely, yes, there's outside meddling in U.S. elections, in all elections. I would just say that is another division. That's another split in the pie, if you will. I mean, you've got Klaus Schwab and the WEF coming right out and telling you that you will own nothing, you'll eat bugs, and you'll somehow be happy. I mean, you have to look at that and think, that's absolutely nuts. It's clown world, but they have enough power, enough money to have started this movement, and they've done a good job. They've spread it all over the world. They've certainly spread it all over the monarchy. I mean, look at Canada, Australia, New Zealand. And the reason I bring them up is because you don't see huge protests because they get beat down. Why do they get beat down? Because they gave their guns up. My hope is that this time around, and I think when I say this time around with COVID, because, they're bringing back the Eris strain, and you should look up Eris. Eris was the goddess of chaos. So, it's like in your face that they're bringing this back. And I just hope people stand up and say, no, I'm not wearing a mask. No, I'm not taking your vaccine. My new pronoun is kiss my ass. I'm not doing it. And in the United States, because we have the Second Amendment, they can't beat people down. They can't go door to door and force anybody to do something because there will be shootouts. And I just hope people stand tall this time around and dig their heels in and say, no, I'm not putting up with this bullshit.
It's been remarkable over the past 3 years to see so many countries of the world act in lockstep within just a few weeks period of time. Pretty much the whole globe was shut down, all these supply chains that you talked about, and so many countries, with a few exceptions. We had Sweden take the exception of that they weren't going to go into full lockdown. We had many of the countries of Northern Africa, and some of the areas of India, for example, that said social distancing is not an option for us, and they were going to give certain medications which were not allowed to be given in our country to their population. They had remarkably better outcomes in those countries, both economically and medically, than those that followed some of the guidelines. As you know, that's just one of many examples.
You're talking about ivermectin. I mean, ivermectin was, a completely safe drug for 50 years or more. And what just came out a week and a half ago? The FDA said, yeah, ivermectin works. Ivermectin's safe. And what were we listening to during COVID? Oh, stop, y'all. It's for cows and horses. Don't eat horse paste. That again goes to everything is a lie. Everything that they tell us, every time they try to push the herd in a direction, they do it with another lie. And I think it's important. These lies are starting to unravel. And one lie that's going to unravel, in my opinion, as I said, I think Biden's either going to step down or get impeached or whatever. But that's going to hurt the dollar. It's already hurting the dollar. I mean, foreigners, how confident can a foreigner be that wants to put money into a safe haven? It used to be the U.S. because we had a hard, fast, and just rule of law. And the rule of law now is gone. And to see the leader of the United States, took millions upon millions of dollars in bribes, how much confidence is that going to give to foreigners to put money into the U.S.? And I've said this for 10 plus years, the entire system runs on confidence. And the point I'm trying to make is, as these lies, and there's so many of them, as these lies unravel and get exposed, confidence is going to break more and more and more, to the point where something somewhere, I can't tell you what it is, I can't tell you which of the 5 areas it will be, geopolitics, politics, finance. I don't know what area it's going to be, but something is going to break. And as everything else is boiling, everything else is going to break. And, I wrote, I've done some interviews, written articles. I've claimed that at some point in time, we're going to live in a Mad Max world. I did an interview 6 or 7 years ago, and it was titled "The World is Venezuela." I took all kinds of crap from trolls about that. I'm spreading fear porn. Well, I got to ask you, how does that thought process look to you now? Does it look like it's possible or probable? I think so.
One of the things that you just touched on, and those who have been paying attention will understand the connection. We talked about the confidence game of loss of confidence in the U.S. That's been one of the catchphrases that's come back when people say there's nothing behind the dollar in the Federal Reserve note because it's not based on gold, it's not redeemable as the dollars used to be, or silver as some of the dollars used to be. It's just based on what? Based on the full faith and confidence in the U.S. government, and some would add, and the U.S. military. Do you want to touch on that? What's the financial connection there?
That's what I was going to say. Is for the last 10 years, the real prop to the dollar has been the U.S. military. But what have we seen in the last 2.5, 3 years? We saw basically our military get their ass kicked on the way out of Afghanistan. The U.S. military, on a readiness basis, has never been this unready, probably in my lifetime, and I'm 60 years old. The big thing, think about in the past, like Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein. What did they say? They said, we're going to issue a gold-backed currency. What happened? We killed them. And we started the Iraq War, the Middle East wars. The military today is no longer, Russia and China no longer, fear our militaries like they did once upon a time. If you look at the hypersonic ability of Russia today, we don't have anything that can come even close. So, if they start firing hypersonic missiles, what's our defense? There is none.
Bill, you've written about these topics and others on your new website. Can you give people a chance to know where they can reach you, both follow your work on your website and reach out to you directly if they want to contact you?
Sure. You can go to, it's just www.billholter.com. And you can contact me through that. There's a contact button. Or if you want to email my business email directly, it's bholter@hotmail.com.
And we'll put a link to the article that we were following the major part of this interview. We'll put a link to that. Folks, if you want to find it quickly on Bill's website, look in the description of this video. We'll put a link to that article so you can read it yourself. I thought, Bill, it was particularly easily understandable, well written, it clearly from the heart, because it sounds like you when one is reading it, and I think that's a good sign. So, folks, if you like hearing from Bill, got to check out that article. And also, if you don't want to miss a single interview with Bill, make sure you sign up for our free newsletter at libertyandfinance.com. Just go to our website, libertyandfinance.com, put in your name, your email address, click submit. You'll get a confirming email. You have to confirm to be opted in, and then you'll get one email in your inbox per day with our latest interviews, including every interview with Bill and any weekly specials, and that way you won't miss a single thing on Liberty and Finance. Bill, any final thoughts before we let you go from Liberty and Finance?
I would just say, I generally tell people to try to prepare, try to get out of the system, try to become as self-reliant as possible. And I would tell you now, do as much as you can, as quickly as you can, because something tells me, I feel that because there are so many different areas that are boiling, the pot's going to boil over somewhere and it's going to affect everything else and the whole thing is going to go. So I would just say, whatever you need to get done, do it as fast as you can. Don't beat yourself up when you forgot something, because everyone's going to forget something. Just do the best you can.
Well, that's the other fallacy I think that we drag into this. It makes us a little bit neurotic, is when we think we're going to do this perfectly. People who are paying attention to this stuff have a high conscientious trait, but you're not going to do it perfectly. We live in an imperfect world. We don't know what's coming. The future is unknown, but you've been able to identify some serious concerns that people need to be aware of so that they can make reasonable, responsible actions to try to improve the chances of their family doing well going forward and getting hurt less than if they hadn't done them. That's about the most of us can do.
Exactly. I agree.
Thanks, Bill, for joining us.
Thank you, Dunnigan.
Miles Franklin Precious Metals is one of America's oldest and most trusted bullion dealers. Miles Franklin is A+ rated and accredited by the Better Business Bureau, licensed and bonded, and has 0 complaints ever registered. Here at Liberty and Finance, we are licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. To order, simply call us, discuss your needs, and we can let you know our live inventory, prices, and availability, and lock in your order over the phone. Once your order is locked, the price is held for you regardless of market fluctuations, and the metals are reserved for you awaiting your settled payment. Within 1 business day of ordering, you will receive an email invoice detailing the order and payment instructions. Miles Franklin accepts payments by bank wire, ACH or electronic check, money order, check mailed priority mail, and cryptocurrency. The fastest forms of payment are bank wire and cryptocurrency. Upon settled payment, metals will ship out within 3 to 5 business days. You will receive tracking information via email. Domestic shipping charges are $15 for any order under 500 ounces of silver or 10 ounces of gold. For orders larger than that, domestic shipping is free. The package will be boxed, fully insured, and labeled discreetly, with no indication of the contents inside. For your privacy, the name Miles Franklin will not even be on the package. To talk to myself, Kaiser, my brother Elijah, or my father Dunnigan, call 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.